Maya Luria will talk about her daughter Kelsey, who was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia in November of 2014 and passed away from this very difficult form of pediatric blood cancer on April 18th of 2015, 6 days after her 18th birthday and less than 6 months after her diagnosis. Maya will talk about the very hard treatment that Kelsey went through and her heart failure shortly before she passed away. Maya will also discuss the nonprofit Bald Beauties Project that Kelsey started and that Maya has taken charge of, which is heavily involved in a number of facets to benefit the cause of pediatric cancer and the cause of acute myeloid leukemia. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Kelsey Taylor Luria began to develop massive headaches, which sounded like constant banging, in the fall of her high school senior year at Catalina Foothills High School in Tucson, Arizona in 2014. On today's podcast, Kelsey's mom, Maya, will join me to talk about what these headaches produced, how quickly Kelsey's health declined, and the legacy that she left and the nonprofit that she started before her passing from the Pediatric Blood Cancer Acute Myeloid Leukemia, just 5.5 months after diagnosis day, which occurred on November 5th of 2014. I'm honored to introduce Maya to my listeners and welcome her to my podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate you having me.
Well, it's quite a journey that Kelsey and you all went through, and it's now been more than 10 years since your beloved daughter Kelsey began to develop these headaches. This was early in her senior year in high school. She was 17 years old. Prior to the onset of these headaches, how had her health been as a child and as an adolescent?
You know, she was always a healthy child. I mean, and nothing that wasn't abnormal for her when she was growing up, some ear infections and whatnot, but nothing more than that. So she was always a healthy child, up to that point.
Now, how long did Kelsey's headaches last before she was seen by a doctor? And how quickly was the thought put out there by a doctor who said that Kelsey had anemia and that these headaches could be a sign of leukemia?
So the headache started right after her senior year started, so in September. And they were a little sporadic in the beginning where, she would go to school, she would see some spots and she'd be like her head is spinning and that she couldn't stay. And she would come home, and this happened a couple of times. And so I did take her to her pediatrician, and we tried to get to the bottom of it. And it's a lot of exploratory, what could be happening. And I think I took her at least twice, maybe three times. And we were just not able to figure out what it was. She had gone in for an appointment, and at one point it was decided that maybe she needed to see a neurologist. So we did get a referral to a neurologist, and that was after we couldn't really determine anything else. But at the same time, my pediatrician had said to her, you look a little pale. I'd like to just do a finger stick because I think maybe you're anemic, and maybe that level was off and maybe that had something to do with it. And she did not want to have a finger prick done, so we didn't have it done. And she finally got to go see a neurologist, and then the neurologist sort of started the same thing where they wanted lab work and to really dig into what was happening with these migraines. And so that's when we finally ended up, and that took us several weeks before we could get in to actually see a neurologist. There aren't that many that are available, so we were on a wait list and got called one day, and so we ran over there as soon as we got that appointment.
And at that time, were these headaches getting worse and worse for her?
I would say that they were increasing in the number of that she was having. And at one point in October, she had a trip planned for her fall break where she was going to go back east she was going to go visit New York to go visit her cousin. And she was super excited about it. And I was worried because she kept having migraines. And she did go and had a great time. And I'm glad that she got to go because it was something that she absolutely loved. And then she came back and the headaches continued. So, and that was like mid-October. She was diagnosed November 5th. So, we continued to see it.
Now, how quickly was Kelsey's diagnosis of acute myeloid leukemia confirmed? And what were her doctors led by, I believe it was Dr. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, Basson?
Basine.
Like I
So,
said, Basine.
yeah, Basine. Yeah. So, well, what happened is after we had seen the neurologist, they had wanted her to go in for blood work, and that was a there I think we saw the neurologist maybe on a Friday, and he asked, could we maybe go to the lab and take care of that over the weekend? Well, so Saturday came, and there was a really bad monsoon storm, and she had the worst migraine that day. And it was really bad. And the neurologist actually called to find out how she was doing. And they had put her on some steroids. I remember that too. So they had put her on a steroid treatment trying to see whether they could sort of break these migraines because they weren't sure what it was, but they still wanted her to have the blood work done. Well, we couldn't get the blood work done. So again, she went to school Monday, she had another horrible migraine. And at that point, I was calling the neurologist saying, we got to figure out what to do here. We can't keep doing this. And so he said, let's admit her. We're going to admit her into the hospital. He wanted to try something because he was not thinking cancer at this time. He thought that she had a chronic migraine, um, these chronic migraines, and because she had been taking Advil all along, or some sort of pain medication, she wasn't able to break the migraine cycle. And so he wanted her to go in to have an IV for a specific medication that he thought would fix that. So Monday night we were able to take her over to the hospital. She was admitted, and it wasn't until the next day we were able to take care of the IV where we could actually do blood work, and they did an MRI at that time. And so it wasn't until after that, it was the blood work that really solidified it. So we knew at that point, or we didn't know, the doctors knew. They actually ran her blood work again, told us that maybe there was a mistake and they wanted to just run it to make sure. And so it was after that that they were able to confirm that she actually had leukemia. They didn't know what type at that time.
The doctor before hadn't been thinking about cancer. Were you thinking about cancer?
Yeah, I don't know. I no, absolutely not. We never in a million years thought about cancer. And when she said anemia, she never said cancer, so we weren't necessarily on that track. I don't know that that's where she was going, but she was probably trying to I know she was really trying to hone down on what could it be. And so when she saw her and thought she looked so pale, she's like, I really want to check your anemia levels. Then I think if she would have known for sure, that probably would have, put her on that track. Um, but yeah, it was never in our minds until we were told. And it was a scary thing for everybody. The doctor had a hard time sharing that news. And we had to be transferred at that point because we weren't at the hospital that does oncology in Tucson.
Well, there are two types of pediatric leukemia. One of which is acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is the most common and the easiest to cure. Unfortunately, Kelsey had acute myeloid leukemia, which is the much more difficult brand of leukemia. Did they tell you that it was acute myeloid leukemia at the time, or they did not let you know?
They did not know. Yeah, they didn't know she needed to have a bone marrow transplant. There is one other that is super rare. There's also CML, which is another type of leukemia. But those two, the AML and the ALL is of course the most the type that most children are diagnosed with, and AML is much less.
When the AML diagnosis was finally given, were you and Michael's, your husband's, did you sit down with the oncologist and did they give you sort of a roadmap of what was going to happen and uh, what the possible survival rate was going to be for her at that
Well,
time?
well, I think we all look those up as you know. I think you're as soon as you hear leukemia, you're looking what types are there, we didn't know anything. I think because you don't know what goes on behind the hospital doors and that there are kids in there that are sick with cancer, right? Because it's just something that you don't think about as far as um, a lot of cancer diagnoses with children. And so it was a very quick learning curve for us to start, checking information out, speaking with the doctors. The doctors were very collaborative with us in being part of the team, being part of that care team, and we wouldn't have wanted it any other way. We wanted to know what was happening, and not only us, Kelsey wanted to know what was happening. I mean, she was 17, and so, she was very much aware of what was happening as well, and so she needed to be a part of that team too.
So Kelsey began a grueling treatment protocol of 4 exhausting rounds of chemotherapy. And one of the results from her treatment was that her hair, as commonly happens to many pediatric cancer patients, fell out. What was her reaction when she showed you and Michael that she was bald?
So, first of all, she was very scared to lose her hair, and I can't blame her. I would be just as scared. We decided to hold a shave party when her hair really started to fall out. So once it was starting to really come out all over the place, we had the family there. We did a big shave party, and afterwards, Kelsey, we walked into the bathroom with Kelsey. She hadn't looked up to this point, and she wanted to see what she looked like. And the first thing she said was, "Now everyone knows I have cancer." And that was really scary. She didn't want people to know that she had cancer. And she had wanted a wig from before, right, as she knew that she was going to lose her hair. She really wanted a wig. So the social workers were able to help us to get her a wig. And I was running out to get scarves and learn fancy knots and what you could do. So just to make her feel better, while she was going through this. Um,
Must have It must have been so heartbreaking for you to hear her say, "Now everybody's going to know I have cancer." Must have been an awful situation. Now, at the end of her first chemotherapy cycle, photographer Stephanie Epperson, whose specialty was glamorous photographs, wanted to take a picture of Kelsey without the wig that she would normally be wearing. Kelsey agreed. And what was her reaction to that photograph?
so it's actually a great story because that day we were only home for 3 days, in between cycles. And Stephanie had reached out and wanted to do a photo shoot. She photographed. She's a senior photographer, so she does all senior portraits for high school. And So she had asked, could she take Kelsey's photo? And Kelsey was thrilled. She really wanted to do it. And she had had an interview that day, actually, with the news earlier in the day at the house. And afterwards, we were going to go and take her down to Stephanie's studio. And Stephanie had also arranged for a makeup artist to be there. So it was really special for her. And so before we left the house, she said, "Mom, I don't think I'm going to wear my wig. Are you okay with that?" And I said, "Absolutely." I said, "I thought you wanted to take photos with and without." And she goes, "Nah, I'm not even going to bring it." And so I think at that point, she had only worn the wig literally maybe twice and not for long periods. And she became much more comfortable, and she had just had a news interview and she wasn't wearing her wig then either. And so I think all of that just helped her to feel much more confident and, beautiful in her own skin and her bald head. And so she just, she rocked it. She knew what to do at that point.
Well, she also had another picture taken, which was again bald, which was so good and she looked so beautiful that she put it as her cover picture on Facebook. What did that say to you and Michael, and how proud were you of her when she did that?
We were just thrilled. She always had a way about expressing herself, and everybody at the school knew that she had cancer. It was everywhere. She had been on the news. She had been all over. She had a huge support system, and so for us, we were just very proud of her for really just conquering that fear.
Now, meanwhile, Kelsey's treatment, which was brutal, was one of great difficulty. She had 3 blood infections and more than 100 transfusions. What were her doctors saying about Kelsey's progress? As the good news was that her bone marrow showed no evidence of leukemia, but did show that Kelsey had moderate heart failure. What were they saying about that?
Yeah. So when she was first diagnosed, she had a 33% leukemia cells. So just, when she was originally diagnosed. And when they went through and did her testing, it was determined that she did not need a bone marrow transplant, that she could just do 4 rounds of chemo. So as she was going through that, they would always, of course, do an echo and, her echocardiogram, and her echocardiogram started to show that there was a little bit of some, heart failure in there. And so at that point, she had been moved over to the PICU for more monitoring, and there were several things that had happened during her um treatments. She had acute appendicitis at one point in time, where they actually removed her appendix. She became highly septic. At one point, she had to have her her lung drained. So there were several things, and her heart was one of those things, and that was one of the reasons is fluid around the heart. So they had to take care of that as well. So it's very scary when you're going through that, and I think you feel that you're using there's not a lot of treatments out there for AML. It's like one protocol that everybody follows, and you follow that protocol, but you don't expect that the drugs that you're giving, somebody to make them better is going to hurt something else, right? And so in this case, it was Kelsey's heart. Um,
When that became apparent, were the doctors concerned about the situation, or did they still feel that they'd be able to get the heart under control? Was and the
we
hope
did
was that she would still be able to recover from what she was undergoing.
So we always thought that yes, she was going to recover from that she was going to be able to, uh, you know, to it would be able to be managed at the time. But now what happened is she ended up having not only some heart issues, she also had acute liver failure. And so at one point, near the end, she went into acute liver failure, and that was significant. And so she was actually medevaced out of Tucson um, to be treated in Los Angeles for her liver failure. We at the same time she was also having some heart issues. Her Fortunately, her liver recovered while we were there. Her heart, sort of continued where it was, and we thought that we would get home and be able to just get that treated, and things would we would be on the up and up, right? But but that did not happen, unfortunately.
Now, this was in the liver failure. The acute liver failure occurred in February. As you said, she had to be airlifted to Mattel Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, obviously for more specialized care. How was the period from, say, so February when you went there until, say, April 10th or 12th? Was she? I know that the liver thing had gotten better, but how was her overall condition as April uh, approached?
So actually, so she didn't go into acute liver failure until sometime actually towards the end of March, or mid March. And I don't remember the exact dates off the top of my head, but we were in LA for Kelsey's birthday, her 18th birthday. So her birthday was April 12th. So it was actually, I think it was like the very, very end of March, because we were there about 10 days. So um, so at the time, she had been battling some other things, such as she had the a horrible issue with her appendix, where her appendix almost burst. And so that became a very scary thing. And that was earlier on. So that would have been probably in the February timeframe that we were there. She recovered from that, was doing much better. And she was going through, I mean, she did all of her chemotherapy, all of her rounds of chemo, like a champ, but, things, eh, there's always something, there's a side effect, there's something that doesn't make you feel good. It's just, there's always something that's happening, and it can be super, super challenging.
Okay, so on April 12th, 2015, you mentioned that it was Kelsey's 18th birthday. Her liver had improved to the point, thankfully, at that time that she could be airlifted back to Diamond Children's Hospital in Tucson, but her heart was failing. Were you being told at that time that Kelsey's future was in immediate doubt, or did you have a good feeling when she got back to a Diamond Children's that everything was proceeding better than it had been when she was rushed to UCLA's Mattel Hospital?
So I think when we left LA, we thought we were definitely on the trajectory to, we were going to work on the heart stuff, and she was going to get through everything. So we never, I don't think we ever envisioned at that point that the turn that took. It wasn't until she got back. She got back that night on her birthday. And she sort of, she started, not she started it was almost like the same thing that happened when she went into liver failure. It was sort of felt like that again. Something was not right. And it wasn't until she got back to Tucson. And so she was now 18. She met with the adult cardiologist at that point, and they took her in for further testing the next day to sort of evaluate what was happening with her heart. So she had an echo right away. And we realized that things were looking much worse now than they were when we left. And, just timing, of course, for all of these things. And so it was at that point that they were discussing whether or not they thought maybe Kelsey might need an LVAD, so a left ventricle device for her heart. And Michael and I went to go visit with the team that does that. And Tucson has a very robust heart transplant team. Um, Here, and so we met with them to learn more about what an LVAD was, or a left ventricle device would be. But it was maybe within a couple of hours that it turned into she was going to need a BiVAD, which was both devices, a left and a right. And at one point they thought she was going to need a total heart, and that was where it got, we were like, you wrap your head around one thing and you're like, okay, we can do this. And then it just kept getting worse and worse and worse.
So by April 16th, which was only 4 days after she had arrived back in Tucson, she was sent home. Was she sent home because the conclusion was that there was nothing they're going to be able to do for her? Or at the time, did she come home to maybe get some rest and recover where she could there?
No, it was determined. And Kelsey had to make the decision. It was gut wrenching. Um, that she needed to go on hospice at that point. There was not, there was not a viable path based on what was happening with her heart. So she made the decision she wanted to be home, and we moved heaven and earth to get her home.
I can just imagine, and thankfully you did. Now, I was reading that she had extensive conversations with you, Michael, and with Max, and I'm wondering if any of those conversations involved the Bald Beauty Project, which Kelsey had already started, but had to be put on hold in the late winter because of her liver failure.
Yeah, so we did. So she'd come up with the idea about the Bald Beauties Project in January after her second photo shoot. And she wanted to do it for other kids. And so she'd worked really hard on putting together her application and what she wanted to do. And we were just waiting for her to get better. And so we figured, couple months down the road, she came up with a name. We sat around, came up with the name. And so that was something that we knew she wanted to do. So when Kelsey came home, we did sit down with her and ask her, we said, we know you want us to do the Bald Beauties Project. And we know you want us to do photo shoots. And so we said, what else do you want us to do? We asked. And so she told us, at the time when she was originally, her idea was to do photo shoots for teens and young adults, because that's what Kelsey was. And so she knew that it really affected them. But as we were sitting there, I asked her, I said, we realize we think we need to do this for all kids, all, not just the teens and young adults, because honestly, so many of them may never have photos of their child. And we wanted to make sure that they have photos of their child, and that we don't just take photos of the child, but we'll also take photos of their family together, so that they have that too. And so that was really important. So she asked us to do that. She wanted, of course, AML research was very important as well. She did not want other children to go through what she had been through. Um, and teen comfort kits was another thing. There's not a lot for teens and young adults in the hospital. There's lots of stuff for for littles. When they go into the hospital, there's quite a few things available from your child life specialists, but not as much for teens. And so it was important for her to be able to give something to other teens and young adults. And so we do that as well.
On April 18th, Kelsey passed away from her AML fight less than 6 months after her original diagnosis. Now, I was reading that one of the possible situations that really hurt Kelsey was that the some of the chemotherapy agents that might have been involved um, with her passing had to do with the heart failure that she had. Can you talk about that? And was that the main reason for Kelsey's passing? Was the heart failure and not necessarily the cancer that was, as we know, was in her body?
Yeah, so she was actually, we had learned when she was at UCLA and they had done a bone marrow transplant that she did not have any cancer cells at that point. So she was basically, um, uh, uh, she was NED, so she didn't have any cancer at that point. It was from the heart. It was from the toxicity of the chemotherapy that she received, which is often relates to late effects. And we hear that term a lot, where somebody could have a late effect of maybe a heart issue, maybe 5 or 10 years down the road. Hers were immediate. And so that was what we ended up seeing. And there are other things too. I mean, many of these chemo agents, you might, there's hearing issues or there's memory things. There could be a variety of different things depending on which chemo it is and what their treatment is like. So for Kelsey, it was the one of the chemotherapy drugs that she was provided, that has an effect on the heart.
Can you talk about Kelsey's persona, which quite obviously was a magnetic and vibrant one?
Yeah, Kelsey, of course, I'm gonna be biased, but
I should hope so.
but Kelsey is a beautiful, a vibrant, girl who had big dreams and a big heart. She, was an amazing writer, and I think maybe Mark, you might have gotten to see a little bit of that. She had an amazing, this in 2014, which was the year that she was diagnosed, she had done so many things that were incredible, including, she went on March of the Living to learn she learned about the Holocaust, and she got to travel to Israel at that time as well. She was able to go to not her senior prom, but she was able to go to a prom that year as well. She got to go to Australia that summer as well, which she has family there. I'm grateful that she was able to do all these things. And I know I shared she went to New York too. And so I feel very lucky that she was able to do that. She was a energetic and loved to be an athletic trainer at the high school. And so that was something that just brought her so much joy. And she loved doing that with the football team. And so when the U of A team would come, it was very exciting for her. She even did a tape off with one of the trainers over at the U of A, where they brought in a football player and they each had to tape up a foot to see who was faster. And that was super fun. So, we tried to make lemons out of lemonade as much as we could. So when we were impatient, that was, it was important for us to be able to do that.
Now, I'd like to ask you about your son, Max. How difficult uh, for him was watching Kelsey deal with her battle. And even though 10 years have passed, has it been a difficult road for him to negotiate because of Kelsey's passing in 2015? Because siblings are deeply uh, affected, of course, by what happens to their brother or sister.
So Max has done really well with always a hard time. He was a freshman in high school. Um, I feel the school really rallied around him as well, and were very supportive. And I think he's always had sort of a network of um, support, which has been huge for him. And he's gone to college, and now he's working, and he's doing really, really well. And I- I- there will always be this part that's going to be with us and with Kelsey. And Kelsey just, I know, wanted just so much the best things for Max.
Well, then she would certainly be proud and very happy about how he's doing. I want to now turn exclusively, pretty much, to your nonprofit, the Bald Beauties Project. That again, Kelsey decided to start before her third round of chemo began, I believe. And her vision was the photo shoots, the care packages, and the research that was done for her. I'd like to ask you a little bit about that. Now, you've partnered with the Children's Oncology Group on supporting research for a cure and perhaps for less toxic treatments for acute myeloid leukemia, and you raised over $200,000 for this endeavor. Can you talk about that? And have you seen progress in any of areas of this disease which are encouraging to you?
So when we realized we wanted to figure out where we wanted to give, we knew that we needed to give on a broader level, like on not just we because there's not a lot of AML. We wanted to make sure that we would have the biggest impact available. And that's why we went to the Children's Oncology Group at that time. And we would provide funding, and we ended up funneling it through to an initiative called Target Pediatric AML. And Children's Oncology Group was part of it. There are several other partners as well. And the idea of it was to sort of take the genetic testing to the next level and sort of figure out, um, because AML is so individual in children, and it's not the same, so everybody is a little bit different. You could look at their genomics and then see if there was another drug that's already available that might be able to um, work for that individual. And so that's a lot of what we've been doing. We're really looking for safer, more effective treatment for kids that are less toxic. And so that piece has been done. The genomic testing, they've been doing that. Uh, and so that's sort of, it's exciting to see they did find one drug that was able to help a child um, with AML. And so, I think it's obviously it's a slow progress, but it's something that we continue to support.
Well, that's very encouraging because it does take a long time for these drugs to get from the testing stage to the bedsides of these kids and adolescents who need it so much. Now, Kelsey's vision has certainly, I think, been looked at, and the progress on the three things that we talked about are excellent. However, there are other things that you've done, including you have donated $150,000 to Diamond Children's Hospital for a teen room known as a space of their own. How grateful are the parents, the patients, and the administration that you have done this? And how grateful would Kelsey have been had she known about it?
Oh my gosh, she wanted a room so bad. It was it was she was the vision for that room. When Kelsey was inpatient, she had she had met another patient who they fast became fast friends, and you would have thought that they were sisters. And there was no place for them to go. I mean, you could go to their room, but that was it. And there was no place that provided any type of levity. And so this room, we call it the lounge, the teen lounge, is a space where the teens can go and sort of escape their room. It doesn't look like any of the rooms, and it has sort of a window to the world, as I like to say, where they can change the three windows that are in there to look like they're in Paris, which was Kelsey's absolute favorite, or or by a lake or by the beach, whether you wanted a metro setting. So they can change the teens can actually change those when they go into the space. So it's really a fun place for them to be.
On your website, you have a Bald Beauties Project photo page, which is extensive and shows pediatric cancer patients, most of them without hair, but not all of them. How important is being able to put a personal touch like this onto your website?
I think it's important to show that cancer is different for everybody and that kids get cancer. And we really we want to provide those kids, we want them to feel confident without their hair. And that was what Kelsey felt. And she wants them to be empowered. And and that was the whole reason that we started this. We wanted them to feel beautiful, confident, and empowered. And that's having those kids be able to do that, and we love to be able to give back to those families in that way. So it's our gift to them, and I think it's hugely important. There's not many things that look bright when you're going through your treatment, and we want them to have a chance to sort of maybe escape that, for even if it's just for a little bit of time, just to have a photo shoot.
Well, I think it's great to have the pictures of these kids. It really you you hear about what kids are going through, and then you see the faces, and it just means so much. Now, you've donated, as I said, over $200,000 for research. You spent $150,000 on the teen room. The money has to come from somewhere. I'm just going to ask you about one of your events, which is the Bubbles and Brunch event. It seems like it's a major fundraiser for you.
That is our big fundraiser of the year. So it's really the only fundraiser. Sometimes we might have a small one to offset it, but typically this is the biggest fundraiser that we do for the year. And we normally do it in the fall, so it tends to be around now. Lately we've been doing it in November. And it's just a fun event, but it's relaxing for folks to come in. We have a silent auction and sort of share updates from where we're at from year to year. And we appreciate our collaboration with Fleming's that we've been holding it out for the last couple of years as well. It's been great.
Can you talk about your annual bereavement retreat that takes place every August in Tucson?
Yeah. So after Kelsey had died, we were fortunate enough to go to a bereavement retreat in the Northeast that fall. And I came back from there and I thought, I feel like there's not much out in the Southwest. I would really like to do something for families that were out this way. And so I reached out to Dina Sherwood, who has Arms Wide Open, True 365. She runs the retreat that I went to. And I asked her if she would she mind? Would she like to partner? And could we hold a retreat out here? And so that was 7 years ago. We've done 6 retreats. We had COVID for one of them, so we had to cancel that one year, but we kept going after that. So we have a collaboration, a partnership with Arms Wide Open, the Bald Beauties Project, and Courtney's Courage. And so it's been great to be able to bring out families. And we have families that come from all over the country for the weekend. And we have a grief facilitator. The kids also get an opportunity to make new friends, friends that maybe know what they're going through as well. They have some grief facilitation as well, but they also get to have a lot of fun. And so we do a lot of different activities over the weekend. So it's a packed weekend, but really something that we're hoping that provides some hope and some healing and some connection.
Now, the nonprofit, again, we talked about really the base that Kelsey laid for it and all the things that you've added on. Where do you see the Bald Beauties Project, say 5 and 10 years down the road, and how satisfying has it been for you to be able to take really Kelsey's dream and turn it into something so special?
I do it because I want, first of all, it's to honor Kelsey, and I love to be able to tell Kelsey's story. So, I want people to know who Kelsey was. And so it's really nice that we're able to do this. We only do it locally. We don't really go outside of the Tucson area. So I guess, if I had my magic wand at some point, maybe we'll expand past that into other places.
Now, Kelsey wanted to major in journalism at the University of Arizona, which she was accepted to, and she wrote a number of very meaningful blogs during her AML fight. And I'd like you to comment on this one as why I was given AML. I will never get back the things I am losing, but I will fight. And because of that, I will be stronger and will impact the world. Since being diagnosed with AML, I have learned so much more about myself. My name is Kelsey Taylor Laurier, and I am more than cancer. How meaningful is that blog?
I think she put it perfectly. She wanted people to know that, she was an individual, not just a cancer diagnosis, which is so important. Yes, she had cancer, but she was so much more than cancer. And I think that's what she really resonates with in that passage.
Where could people get in touch with you and with the Bald Beauties
So the Bald Beauties Project
Project?
is, yeah, so it's baldbeautiesproject.org. And we have a contact us page right there that those emails go to me.
And I'm guarantee you read every single one of them. And I'm sure that it means a lot to you whenever you get a contact from someone on that. And I'm sure you get many of those.
Yes, yeah. We also have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. So
As we come to the end of this podcast, first of all, I know it's been 10 years, but my condolences on what you went through, what Kelsey went through, and the amazing way, really, which she just held her head up high. Even though at the beginning she didn't want to lose her hair, it turned out to be, and I mentioned to you this before the podcast, she was a beautiful young woman, and she was beautiful as bald, believe me. And obviously, you know that, and anyone else would take a look at a picture would agree with that. And I want to wish you and Michael and Max much success. Most importantly, much good health in the future. And thank you very, very much for taking the time to come on my podcast.
thank you so much for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Well, it was great to speak with you.
Thank you.
I hope that you appreciated hearing Maya talk so beautifully about her beloved Kelsey and what a vibrant personality she was, and so unfairly, as happens far too often, taken away by the most terrible disease of pediatric cancer. Kelsey has left a great legacy, and one that Maya is helping to keep alive and will for many years to come. This is Mark Levine, and please tune in on Thursday when I will speak with John and Jen Wall about their nonprofit Zach's Bridge, which focuses on peer-to-peer mentorship and was started in honor of their son Zach, who passed away from osteosarcoma in November of 2021.